Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Lunchtime Learning. I'm delighted to be joined today by Dan Charner. Dan is a Group Managing Director of Haslams and Michael Hardy. Welcome. How are you today?
Yeah, hi Stephen. Thanks for having me on.
Great. So I'm curious to know, how did you get into this industry?
Well, my routine was probably slightly unusual, and I'll just give you the abbreviated version, but it was actually in a crisis. So my mum set up a letting agency in 1972, grew it, good business, and in 2007, the three most senior people in the company all got ill. So I stopped what I was doing, which was management consultancy, and went to work in Oxford for a year to lend a hand. That year was 2008. And for those people watching who can remember 2008, it was quite a weird year when we didn't have Donald Trump then, but we did have quite a lot of chaos. Lehman Brothers went bust in September. And then at the end of 2008, I was working with my mum and dad at that point. They turned around and they said, "Do you want to stay?" We just had our first child, and my wife and I said, "Fine, yeah, we'll stay in Oxford." And been in property ever since. So an
What
unusual route in. My first job was commercial director, which sounds frightfully important, but in fact, it was just doing all the stuff those operating the business didn't have time to do. And then that morphed into different things, and I became the MD, and we went from there.
what was it like working with your family?
Yeah. So my mum is quite a force of nature, extraordinary entrepreneur, incredibly opinionated, quite aggressive, very, very good judgment, very instinctive, like a classic natural entrepreneur. Um, and generally, it was wonderful because you never had to think what is the person's agenda. Each person, and particularly each senior person, brings an agenda to the business. Not necessarily bad, but everyone's got their perspective. So you always have to take on board somebody's agenda or perspective into what they say. But with family members, if you have a good relationship, if you don't have to worry about the agenda. And what the one thing my mum and I had, and my dad, who was kind of more like a non-exec director, is we never had to second guess the agenda. We only ever spoke about what's in the best interest of the company. And it's very hard to get that. So just on that basis, it's a privilege, really. And I feel very grateful that we had that experience and it kind of deepened the bonds. And when we eventually sold the company, we split as friends, if that makes sense.
Okay, so you sold the company. What was next?
So yeah, we sold the company to Countrywide. So after that was working for Countrywide, having sold it. And we unfortunately caught them at their very worst and chaotic. I don't really want to spend too much of this session talking about it, but it was in the peak Alison Platt chaos period. And not a period I think anybody will look back on fondly inside that business. But we emerged through that. Eventually, we got put under the wing of Hamptons, but operating as our own entity. The brand I haven't mentioned actually, Finders Keepers in Oxfordshire. And then once we got put under the wing of Hamptons, things calmed down a bit. But yeah, it was very, very difficult. I mean, just to illustrate it, at one point, every single hire in the whole business was being signed off by the leadership team in London. Completely dysfunctional. But we're dragging back some bad memories here, so let's move on.
Okay, so let's move on. So you've have the pleasure of managing a lot of people, a lot of estate agents and letting agents.
Yeah.
What would you say are the qualities of a top performer that is needed to be a rock star in agency?
Yeah, so we've got just the shape of the business. At Haslams, we've got about 40, 45 people based in Reading. We're managing about 1,250 properties. And then we've got new homes and resi sales. And then in Michael Hardy, we've got about 450 managed properties and two sales businesses. So all in all, it's about 80 people. So it's a classic kind of SME. The qualities of a good rock star in terms of negotiator, I think they're really easy to discuss. It's you've got to be really competitive. I think you've got to be interesting and interested in people. You've got to be quite diplomatic at times. You've got to be commercial, and you've got to be really determined. So a mixture of interested in property and people, charming and determined is a good. That's a good group of skills to have.
Lovely. You talked about being commercial. I'm sure some people are watching this that may be just starting off in their journey. What do you mean by that?
This is a commercial. Crudely, it's acting in the best interest of the business so we can make sustainable profits. And so we can make money on each transaction. So we're focused on profit, not the vanity of turnover. The weird thing is, you think most people would have good commercial acumen, and it's not true. And more people than you might think, in my experience, I don't know what you think, Stephen, they follow the income, not the profit. And by that, what I mean is they think any deal is a good deal. So we'll let him manage something at 7%. Yeah, but what happens if it's really high maintenance or attracts bad tenants or the landlord's difficult? Are we going to lose money on it? And if we're going to lose money on it, we shouldn't have it. Whereas some people, all they think is, I want the board up, I want another unit. So commercial means short, medium, and long term profitable business.
Okay, now I've read that you do some learnings at Cranfield.
Yeah,
You teach people at 8 o'clock in the morning after 3 cups of coffee. And
yeah,
you're talking about value proposition.
yeah.
So what would be the value proposition for estate agents and letting agents, please?
Well, in simple terms, yeah, this is a big topic. In simple terms, each agent is trying to maximize the income for their client. Obviously, in residential sales, where it's a one-off, and we're talking residential in this session.
Period. Yeah.
I'm not in the commercial world. Um, and then generally for landlords, we're trying to maximize income, but not always, because it may be that a better tenant, one tenant's better than another one, and it's better to have a slightly lower income. Some landlords don't get that, but certainly that's how I've been trained to think. So the value proposition is maximizing the income for resi sales, and then a mix of income and long-term asset protection for landlords. The challenge is this: just like accountants, just like solicitors, just like structural engineers, we are all doing roughly the same thing. So how do you stand out? How we're doing these things does differ. So each business needs to try and plant a flag in the ground if they want to try and stand out. For our parent company, Haslams, it's quite clear. Value propositions are unbelievably clear. We get the deal done. And they've just taken a bit of territory, planted a flag in the ground, and they own it. And the business backs it up. They do a lot of deals. They're very deal driven. So the values and the culture and the business are all aligned around a very clear proposition. Uh, and so I think any agent listening to this, they've got to kind of figure out where they sit in this and try and believe in it.
So you're starting off an agency, you want to build it, you want to build a brand, you want to build a vision, you want to build a culture. Where do you actually start? How do you create that culture from day one?
Yeah, I'd start by not overthinking it really. So if you're just starting, the culture is going to flow from your personality. So a lot of founder brands, the culture and the values come from the personality. So if we think of Bowden, the clothing company, Johnny Bowden's a bit quirky, a bit off the wall, etc., but believes in products. So you've got a mixture of quality and a bit of quirkiness, and that created the Bowden brand. Same with Charles Tyrwhitt, really, where the chap who runs that who started it still owns it, and that's what flows through. You at Green and Co, and I imagine from your founder, a lot of the culture flowed from that. So to anybody starting, I'd say don't overthink it. The one thing I would say, and I think most people don't understand this, but my training was in advertising, where all we did was kind of brand building or brand stewardship. Is the word brand is not the logo, it's not the design. A brand is only something that means something to people. So if nobody's heard of you, you don't have a brand. If people can't tell what your company stands for, what your values are, how you're different, you don't have a brand. So think of McDonald's, where it's, we know what that stands for. It's all about family. And then think of Barclays Bank. What does Barclays Bank stand for? I don't really know. And I've been a customer for 42 years. I know I look younger. But so yeah, the whole brand thing, you've got to mean something.
Okay, I just want to come back on something that occurred to me. You talked about all different professions there, and you talked about estate agency. Estate agency, you have the Murray index all the time, and estate agents are ranked incredibly low the whole time. How can estate agents improve that trust factor? Because really, what do most people think of estate agents?
Well, Stephen, it's good to know it's 8:40 and you're asking me really quite difficult questions. So
My pleasure.
um, the reputation of the industry drives me insane. And you see things every week, agents perpetuating this, either by overvaluing, which is the obvious one, lying to people deliberately to get the business, um, by knocking their competition in their advertising. Uh, so the reputation is a problem. Compulsory qualifications would help. That would help. So bring on ROPA, the regulation of property agents. We would love that. We support that. That would help. So we have more like an American system where you actually have to jump over a bar. And then I think other than that, I think you have to see it as an opportunity, which is if we, the agent, can behave in the right way, you can create trust. So I would say let's not worry on an individual basis, on a vow, talking to a landlord, talking to a tenant. If we behave in the right way and give the right advice, let's ignore how they think of the industry. But for sure, when you start speaking to clients before they get to know you, they start with a level of distrust. That classic quote that Jeremy Paxman used to say about the politicians he interviewed, which is, why is this bastard lying to me? And unfortunately, some clients out there think that about the agents. So you start on the defensive. So you just have to prove your worth, do a good job, speak with integrity, speak honestly, deliver the goods, and then build trust. There's nothing else you can do, right?
Oh, look, I agree with you. It's a challenge. There are some exceptional agents on there. I think I've publicly said on another podcast that I think 95% of agents in the UK are not very good. That wasn't what I did say. It was a lot ruder than that. Um, and that there's only 5% that I think are exceptional, and most probably 2% just do the basics exceptionally well. And to me, I find that scary. I really do. So I can understand why there's such a trust factor. And, as people know that have been listening to this, my girlfriend was looking to sell and buy, and the whole process was incredibly scary and just very sad as an industry professional to see what was going on. Very, very scary. Um,
Yeah, I think that there's kind of areas where the agent can influence it. What I would say is the whole sales process is just hard, particularly if you're in a chain. And you could argue it's almost a miracle with the system we have in this country that we get over 1 million transactions done a year. Because being able to be gazumped or gazundered, pulled out at any point, etc. But yeah, look, there's no enforcement, there's no real regulation. Anybody can become an agent. You just need a phone. I would love that to change.
okay, on the rental side now, you've got the Renters' Right Act that's obviously started, and coming in more in force in May. Um, as an agent, I know there's a few agents that maybe even don't know about it, but let's forget about them. The ones that do know about it and actually going to do something about it, you obviously manage a lot of properties. Um, how can I, as an a letting agency, continue to grow my lettings book with what's going on?
Yeah, so we've been knee deep in Renters' Rights Act, really. I think they launched it September the 10th, 2024, and we spent a lot of time on it. So the debate about the policy has been and gone. We accept it. We move on. Um, the big question for agents is twofold. It's how do we manage it and implement it, which in a way is the easy bit. And then, like your question, how do we grow? And how do we grow in a period where the government is deliberately trying to make it less attractive to be a landlord, A, and B, the wider economic world is changing in terms of interest rates not being at the low levels they were for 10 years. So to grow, you just have to do the stuff you've always done, probably better than anything. You've got to deliver a cracking service because getting an existing client to give you a property they got with another agent is going to be the fastest, quickest, and most profitable way to get new business. So that's number one, right? Is forget the marketing, forget all the PR, just do a good job and try and persuade your clients to move properties from other agents. Easier said than done, right?
Yeah.
That's number one. Number two, you've got to try and find some investment propositions and help clients buy more. What's happened with, I mean, we've read a lot about it in the landlord world. We've got this kind of paradox happening, really, which is the smaller investors are disposing and cashing out. Not all of them, but slowly, little bits. And then the well-funded big landlords are still investing because they've got the systems and processes. Sorry, my camera's moving all over the place. And I
Okay.
don't know how to turn off this automatic thing. I'll try and keep still. Sorry if this is screwing up your video, Stephen.
No,
So,
it's
and
fine.
then the bigger landlords are still investing, but they're going to kind of slightly different products. So they're going to more your HMOs, your refurbs, your value add, because it's only by doing the value add that you get the yield up. And the value add takes time and energy, and you've got to have good trades, etc. So if you want to be in that game as an agent, you've got to follow the money. You've got to be able to service that different product. So do you want to let rooms in an HMO? It's quite messy business, but if you've got 8 rooms in a property at £800 a month, maybe you can make that work. So do good service, try and help people buy things. And then probably third is marketing. But what we're finding, and I don't think I'm telling any state secrets here, uh, it's quite hard to locate landlords through marketing. That's not an easy thing to do when there's slightly fewer of them. So it's going to come back to being really well known in your community, doing all the good stuff that good agents do, sponsorships, putting the energy in, putting the positive energy into the community, doing charitable stuff, good service, like all the basic stuff that agents were doing 40 years ago, 30 years ago, 20 years ago, it's still relevant. Yes, if you want, you can spend your life on LinkedIn. That's fine. And that will work for some agents and more power to them. So the marketing is part of it, but it's probably third.
Okay. I'm conscious of time, so a couple more questions if that's
Yeah.
okay with you. Um, if I'm an agent and I'm starting on my journey, um, where can I find what's going to help me become a better agent? What do I need to look at? Is there anything you've read, anything I can go to that's going to help me, or is it just doing the tools and learning?
Well, I think the most important thing if you're not working for yourself, is to try and find somebody really good to learn from. Because your first big boss will have a disproportionate impact on how you operate. So if they cut corners, they're a bit dodgy, then you will probably learn that from them. But if they're a decent operator, then you're in good stead. In terms of content and information, there's so much stuff out there now. I'd beware of the paid courses, but I mean, I listen to Savills podcast, Knight Frank podcast. I listen to the Property Hub podcast. I don't necessarily get blown away by every episode, but there's a lot of good content out there. Um, uh, so I think you can pick and choose things like this. There's a lot of good content out there, but I think wanting to learn, wanting to get better is a kind of mindset, and some people have got that and some people haven't. Some people don't really want to get better. They just kind of coast through life. And fair enough, good luck to them. But if you're really motivated, I think this is a very meritocratic industry where if you've really got something about you and you deliver the goods, you will go up the ladder. And if you want to create your own business, the fact there's no barriers is then a good thing, and you can just crack on and make it happen. So I think we see that. I think it is quite a kind of meritocratic industry, and I think that's one of the really nice things about the industry.
So where do you find these learn it all people rather than know it all?
You got to just try and get out there, meet people, and follow the vibes, as my kids would say. Just um, yeah, I mean, I like people who think they don't know it all. Know it all people really, yeah, they can be left alone, really. I think you know, got to have some humility. Every day we learn something. Every client can teach you something. Nobody's cracked this industry. You know, some people have made a lot of money, and that's great. But nobody's got it sorted. You know, we're all on a journey, I think, here, which sounds like a cliche, but it's true. The Renters' Rights Act, it's going to change the game, and none of us have dealt with it yet. And we're going to have to be quite fleet of foot this year because there's going to be stuff coming up nobody's thought about. But for some of us, we look forward to that.
And that's a nice place to end. So, Dan, thank you so much for being my guest. If people want to get hold of you, how do they do that, please?
Yeah, Dan Channer, LinkedIn, I guess, is the easiest way, or dan.channer at haslams.net, haslams.net. Or
Brilliant.
come and pop in if you're in Central Reading.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks so much for being a great guest and sharing all your learnings. Thank you all for watching and listening today. Much appreciated. Until the next one, have a good day, everybody. Thank you and goodbye.